Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are completely dismantling the fear of failure and that paralyzing illusion of perfectionism. You know the feeling, right? If you've ever felt completely stuck or totally overwhelmed by a massive goal, or maybe you're just afraid to start because the conditions aren't exactly perfect, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to dive into some absolutely fascinating data and historical evidence that prove taking messy, imperfect action might actually be the ultimate secret to success.
So I want you to be really honest with yourself for a second. Are you waiting for the perfect moment? Let's face it. Have you been putting off your biggest goals, maybe starting a business, writing that book, shifting your career, or just getting into better shape, because you're waiting for this magical, ideal moment where you finally feel 100% ready? The hard, undeniable truth is that this magical moment, it simply doesn't exist. Waiting for it is literally just procrastination in a really clever disguise.
There's this amazing ancient Chinese proverb that just hits the nail on the head. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. When we waste our time waiting for perfection, we are essentially robbing ourselves of our own growth. By waiting, the only thing we actually guaranteed is the status quo. Think about it. The time that just slips by while we wait to feel ready is time we could have spent learning, adjusting, and actually getting closer to our goals.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the perfect moment trap.
So, how do we actually break out of this trap? Well, we can look to the beautiful Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi. It's an aesthetic principle that actively celebrates simplicity, transience, and above all, imperfection. When we embrace the messy stuff through wabi-sabi, we start to really understand that taking imperfect action is always better than taking no action at all. Look, life is messy. It's totally unpredictable. If we demand absolute perfection before making a move, we are going to be paralyzed forever. Wabi-sabi basically gives us permission to start exactly where we are with all of our flaws and actually find beauty in that genuine, raw effort.
And that mindset leads us perfectly into a brilliant piece of Stoic philosophy from Marcus Aurelius, which Ryan Holiday talks about in his book, The Obstacle is the Way. The idea is simple but incredibly profound. What stands in the way becomes the way. Holiday tells this old story of a king who secretly placed a huge boulder right in the middle of a main road and then hid a purse of gold coins underneath it. While most people just complained about the rock or gave up and turned around, one peasant finally used a branch to pry the heavy rock out of the way. He found the gold, along with a note from the king explaining that every obstacle is actually an opportunity to improve our condition. The obstacle isn't blocking your path, guys. The obstacle is your path.
Moving right along to Section 2. Famous failures and grit.
Okay, I want to share a raw number with you. 5,126. That is a staggering number. It represents the exact amount of failed prototypes Sir James Dyson went through. And that wasn't over a few months, that was over 15 agonizing years. Just think about the sheer mental fortitude it takes to fail 5,000 times and still show up to work the next day. But he didn't stop, and on attempt number 5,126, he successfully created his revolutionary bagless vacuum cleaner, which built a multi-billion-dollar empire. If he had given up at failure number 1,000 or even 5,000, we would literally never know his name today.
Or how about 30? That's the number of times mega novelist Stephen King's very first book, Carrie, was rejected. 30 times! He got so discouraged he actually threw the manuscript in the trash. His wife literally had to fish it out of the garbage and begged him to try just one more time. And that next attempt, it launched one of the most illustrious writing careers in human history.
Let's rapid fire a few more historical examples just to completely smash this myth of overnight success and effortless talent. Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team and missed over 9,000 shots in his career. Steven Spielberg was rejected not once but twice by the USC Film School. Jerry Seinfeld was booed right off the stage during his first stand-up gig. Walt Disney was fired by a newspaper editor because he allegedly lacked imagination. Can you believe that? And Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first TV anchor job in Baltimore. Every single one of these absolute titans faced crushing, totally embarrassing defeats. What separated them wasn't a lack of failure. It was exactly how they responded to it.
Which brings us to Section 3, fixed versus growth mindset. So what is the secret sauce here? What actually separates these people who push through from everyone else? It all comes down to grit. Psychologist Angela Duckworth defines grit as passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. It's treating life like a marathon, not a sprint. Duckworth studied West Point cadets, National Spelling Bee competitors, even rookie teachers in really tough neighborhoods. And she found that the biggest predictor of success wasn't IQ, it wasn't social intelligence or good looks, it was grit. And here is the real kicker. The data shows that natural talent actually doesn't make you gritty. In fact, grit is often unrelated or even inversely related to raw talent. Highly talented people sometimes quit early, simply because they aren't used to the struggle.
To really understand how to build that grit, we've got to look at Dr. Carol Dweck's groundbreaking research out of Stanford. She found that it all boils down to two foundational mindsets. On one side, you've got the fixed mindset. This is the belief that your intelligence is completely stagnant. You get what you're born with, and that's it. In a fixed mindset, effort is actually seen as a negative because the assumption is that truly smart or talented people shouldn't even have to try hard. But on the flip side, you have the growth mindset. This is the incredibly liberating belief that your intelligence and abilities can change substantially over time. Effort isn't a sign of weakness, it is the exact mechanism that builds your skills.
When you look at these mindsets side by side, the results are like night and day. If you operate with a fixed mindset, failure feels like a massive personal threat. So what do? You make excuses, you blame others, or you just give up. Why? Because failure implies you inherently aren't good enough. But if you have a growth mindset, your reaction to failure is to take responsibility and lean in. You try harder. Failure isn't an identity, it just becomes data that tells you how to adjust. And the most empowering part of all this research is that anyone, literally no matter your age, can flip the switch from a fixed to a growth mindset with some practice and self-awareness.
All right, let's look at Section 4, the cost of doing nothing. I want to tell you a quick tale of two massive companies to really drive this home. Back in 1968, there was a struggling startup running super low on cash trying to sell wooden toys. The founder decided to scrap that safe idea and take a bold, really uncertain leap into the completely unknown world of electronic gaming. That company? Nintendo. They chose messy action over fearful stagnation. Now compare that to the 1990s. Kodak, an absolute giant in the photography world, actually invented digital camera technology, but they hesitated. They were terrified that digital cameras would kill their wildly profitable film business, so they sat on it. They did nothing. And the result? Nintendo is a global icon today, while Kodak filed for bankruptcy. Inaction, driven by the fear of making a mistake, is very often the biggest risk you could possibly take.
And finally, Section 5. Consistency always beats intensity.
You know, we often think we have to push ourselves to the absolute limit, going 100 miles an hour every single day to be successful. But actually, studies of elite distance runners show the optimal balance for training is an 80-20 split. That's 80% low intensity and only 20% high intensity. Pushing your limits every single day is actually counterproductive. Going too hard all the time just skyrockets your risk of burnout and injury. Real progress comes from manageable, sustainable behaviors. You do not need to burn yourself out daily to see incredible results.
And let's be real, change is genuinely hard. Scientific modeling shows us it takes an average of 66 days to solidify a new behavior into a habit in your brain. It is absolutely not an overnight process. And that is exactly why consistency matters so much more than intensity. Small, manageable actions that you repeat daily are what create sustainable momentum over that 2-month period. You don't need a flawless plan, you just need to keep showing up day after day to let those neural pathways form and lock in.
So how do we jumpstart that 66-day clock? I've got 2 highly actionable rules for you to bypass your brain's primal instinct to procrastinate. First up is the 5-second rule. When you feel that hesitation creeping in, give yourself exactly 5 seconds to take a physical action towards your goal. Stand up, open the laptop, put on your running shoes, just move. Second is the 5-minute rule. Tell yourself you are only going to work on the task for 5 minutes. That's it. What happens is taking action generates emotion. It triggers what psychologists call completion bias. Once you actually start for 5 minutes, your brain releases dopamine, and you'll almost always want to keep going. You're literally generating your own motivation on the spot.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct challenge. What is one small thing you can commit to starting in the next 5 minutes, even if the timing isn't perfect? Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for the new year. Embrace the messy, imperfect reality of right now. Apply that 5-minute rule and just start. Remember, the obstacle is the way. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what you start building today.